Omar, appreciate your time today, my man. I'm excited to talk all things Snow League, but let's set some context for the listener before we get too deeply into it. Give us the quick backstory on you and also how the idea for the Snow League came about.
Well, first, yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. Uh, Myself, I actually grew up, I'm Turkish. First of all, I was born in Istanbul. And when I was a year old, my parents moved to Santa Barbara. I think my mom told my dad if we were going to move, she wanted warm weather. So I ended up there. I was an engineer at Stanford, played a bunch of sports growing up. And I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So out of Stanford, I was the sixth person at this robotics company, and I was building robots. Realized I didn't love building robots or engineering, but I liked building businesses. So I went off to business school at Northwestern, and then spent a couple years at the Boston Consulting Group doing, Fortune 100 type management consulting. And that was mostly because I knew I was going to spend my career building businesses. So I wanted I wanted that kind of big company experience and boardroom experience. Then I started ad tech company in the clean energy space, bootstrapped the whole thing, sold that in 2015. And then in my third business, I realized, okay, now I want to do something fun. So I grew up loving sports as all kinds. I actually grew up skateboarding, but playing a lot of tennis and baseball and a lot of different things. And education was important to me. So Masterclass had come out and I loved it, but it was a little all over the place.
Yeah.
There was an actor teaching acting, and then there was Steph Curry teaching basketball. And so I figured I would build one specific to sports and wellness. And that's how I started a company called The Skills. And I got Shaun White to teach snowboarding, Maria Sharapova to teach tennis, Justin Jefferson to teach wide receiver, and about Michael Phelps to teach swimming. And so we had these great athletes, and we'd bring them in for 2, 3 days, and we'd film a lot of content on and off the court. So yes, you can learn how to kick from Michael Phelps, but he would also talk about, adversity and, overcoming, failure or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So that's where I met Sean. And then that was, I guess, maybe close to 5 years ago, when that company, all that content's over with NBC Sports now on their Sports Engine platform. And Sean was retiring, and he had this idea of creating a league because snowboarding and free skiing, in particular half pipe, the discipline he's most known for, they had all these separate events, and they were all great events. You had X Games, you had the Do Tour, you had um, the Burton U.S. Opens, and they were all great, but they were all separate. So you couldn't tell a story, just like most
Yeah.
leagues. You didn't have a story, and at the end, there's a champion. Um, and there was this opportunity. Burton had decided to shut down the US Opens, which was considered one of the best run events. And fortunately, my COO comes from there, and a lot of my team does come from there. And so he had this opportunity to build a league in a space where there was already a lot of success, but it was just fragmented industry. So it's kind of a bit of mine and a bit of how Sean and I started, and we're lucky to kind of have him so involved. He is, I mean, I've worked with a lot of athletes, like
Yeah.
as we talked about, but he is. He's not just slapping his name on this thing. He is really every day putting blood, sweat, and tears into building the future of the sport. And we're really excited to have that kind of person driving the business forward.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Appreciate the context. And it's interesting because you've worked in a number of different industries in various capacities. Are there any like specific lessons or takeaways from maybe the advertising industry or robotics that you've been able to translate and use in the sports world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple things. It's the same thing actually in sports. So the same thing that Maria Sharapova, Michael Phelps, anyone tells you, it's the same thing I tell my kids. You just have to put the time in. And if you put the time in, you'll become great. And yes, there's some limitations on
Yeah.
what the level could be that you'll get to, but there's really, if you're not putting the time in, someone else is. And so I think for me, every business I've built, it's first and foremost about figuring out what you're building and being focused on it and then putting in that time. So you gotta, you can't do everything, right? And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the differences. That's why we started with just half pipe,
Yeah.
because a lot of those other events kind of do everything. There's half pipe, there's something called knuckle huck. There's big air, there's slope style. Then on top of that, there's other, sometimes they'd have skateboarding and other sort of events and disciplines going on. We just really wanted to stay focused. Half pipe is naturally an amphitheater. It's also, the most watched sport of all of these action sports. So people tune in to the Olympics, for example, to watch half pipe and figure skating and hockey, right?
Yeah.
It's naturally very fun sport to watch. So we wanted to stay focused on make one product great and grow from there. And I think that that's a pretty common thread across all of them. And then it's always then there's some real tactical stuff.
Yeah.
I really believe in foundational things like being very clear about who's accountable, the due dates, like what because you can always just dream up a lot of things in an entrepreneurial setting, but you do have to be very process oriented and move pretty quickly. So there's a lot there. I like rapid prototyping. Like, if you spend forever to just try to make something perfect, well, guess what? Like 5 years from now, we're going to be, who knows where we'll be. So, perfection is the enemy of progress in some ways in an
Yeah.
early business. So yeah, there's quite a few like real fundamental similarities in how we're building this to how I built the other companies.
Yeah, on that note about prototyping, when you think about where the Snow League is right now, how much of that initial idea has evolved or maybe pivoted from where you guys thought it would be when you started having the conversations about building it to where it's at now?
Yeah, early on, Shaun knew he wanted to do it differently. He wanted to elevate the product on and off the field. And I think that was really important. A lot of the athletes has been 30 years and the product was kind of the same thing as 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So not only did we implement head-to-head competition, it was all built around, well, one for the athletes. So a lot of what Shaun thought about is he would, between runs in the previous format, it would be sometimes 90 minutes between his first run and his second run. He literally would get iced, right? And so now we have head to head. So if you and I are in the quarterfinals against each other, you go, then I go, and the fans can kind of like see it. It used to be that I might be trying to beat your run, but your run happened 2 hours earlier.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit better for the fan, it's better for the athlete. Uh, and then, yeah, we get into it and we immediately get feedback that there's a lot of runs for the athletes now because it's a bit more than they used to do. And so, first thing we did between event one and two is we pulled one run out that we thought was a bit unnecessary in the third, in what's called the last chance qualifier. And it was a win-win. It actually made it so that when we pulled this run out of the competition and we just did one more run, it made it so that we were getting the better people kind of coming out of qualifying into the final eight. So we have a championship day where we have the top eight go into a bracket and it's quarterfinals, semis, finals. So yes, so we don't have to go through a huge negotiation in the off season and votes. And yes, we do have a board, but that board is, very quick to make decisions. I think Paul Rabel said the same thing about PLL a few
Yeah.
times. It's like, yeah, we can move on a dime if we see something we want to do. So there have been some minor tweaks, and I know you know, we try not to make major tweaks like in season, and we're about to finish our first season here in 2 weeks, 3 weeks in Switzerland. But yeah, when we go into the off season, I think we have a number of things we're excited to adjust. And the good news is it doesn't, we don't have to move mountains to adjust them.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked to a number of different people who are building new leagues, and they talk about how insanely difficult it is in terms of just building something from scratch, or even like taking maybe an old sport and reimagining it in a different way. What's
Yeah.
been the most challenging aspect of building this new league to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, like we're very lucky because we had a lot of ingredients for success that I talked about earlier because these events had audience. If you look at the actual like domestic Nielsen ratings for a half pipe event, not around the Olympics, just an off year, like they're really good. They beat a lot of other sports. If you look at the athletes and their need for this platform that Shaun is building, we are able to get first question I asked Shaun, how are we going to get the athletes? He said, well, unfortunately, they don't have enough events. And so this platform, they will love it. Um, So I think one of the things that was probably one of the biggest challenges was avoiding scope creep.
Mm.
And there's so many things we want to do. I want to make a doc series and I want to do this and I want to expand into this country and I want to expand into different disciplines. But I really do believe our ability to stay focused has while it's one of our biggest challenges, has been one of our biggest strengths. Um, we're lucky to have Shaun, so a lot of leagues don't get on NBC in year one, and they don't get on Eurosport all over Europe, and we're on Great Sport in China. So we're in 175 countries with top tier, linear distribution, and then we have very strong, social, digital, and streaming partners as well. So, in some ways, I feel very lucky because, I've got the best to ever do it in the sport,
Yeah.
helping out. But yeah, I'd say staying focused and really just it's hard, right? It's hard. You want to do so many different things when you're building a business, but you pick your lane and you do it really, really well. And then I think the athletes, the fans, everyone starts to sort of see the product out there that you're putting. It's dramatic, it's exciting. It's you're telling athlete stories.
Yeah.
That was one thing that didn't happen, right? Because you had a one-off event. So if you have an event and it's in January and then it's gone until next January, you have like how do you keep the storylines going? So
Yeah.
now we get storylines built in and you're starting to know about like kids like Jake Pates and Matty Mastro and Ayumu's brother Kaishu, who just set the world record last weekend for the highest air out of a half pipe, and something like 40 million people have seen it on socials. And like those stories now we can keep them alive
Mhm.
365.
Yeah, 100%. You alluded to this, like wanting to create like a docu series, and obviously like media and distribution is shifting. Talk a little bit more about the athlete storytelling piece, because I think that's really intriguing and kind of central point to like how do you engage fans in the off season. So like what are some of the other strategies that you all are trying to implement in terms of like putting the athletes at the forefront and really getting
Yeah.
their stories out there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my favorite strategy in this is that the athletes are our superpower, right? We are lucky if you've been on a mountain and you've skied, and there's 125 million of us that ski and snowboard, and enjoy it. There's something inherently really cool about these kids than these men and women that can flip three times out of a half pipe. And so they have huge followings
Hmm.
and they cross over into not just sport, but their fashion and their style and the music they listen to. And so we have we're lucky to have a sport where we have athletes from all over the world. Those athletes are superstars, in their countries, internationally. So for us, it just so happens that they are as excited about the Snow League as we are them. So we want them to really tell their stories and we want to support that. And it even goes towards the partnerships we do. So when we have partnerships, those partnerships will almost always work with our athletes as well. So we're kind of trying to make a league where they can really make a living day in and day out. And if we do that, then the whole thing work, the whole thing kind of works very symbiotically together. And they tell a lot of the stories of the league. I truly believe that at the end of the day, a lot of people, especially with an emerging league, are tuning in because of the personalities and the athletes who are doing it. They may have a favorite woman in the skiing field or a favorite man in the snowboarding field that they watch. And so we're pulling on that thread a lot. And obviously going forward, you can do that socially, digitally, in different formats. You can, and yes, you could, do a drive to survive type thing, but to be honest, in the way, there's so much of that now. I mean, the way these things are consumed and this media is consumed is it's a bit all over the place. So we, I think we sort of first and foremost lean into them. And then beyond that, a lot of those other pieces are being considered, and you'll probably see some stuff coming out. We have a really great production team in-house. I brought in the guy that ran Red Bull's Media House to run our production. And we have great content people on the social digital side. So we that's all in-house for us.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's really important when it comes to the content.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about Sean's involvement and him being, obviously one of the greatest to ever do it in the sport. What have you learned from working closely with him about how he thinks about, building this league and just some of the I guess takeaways from his mind as a highly competitive athlete and,
Yeah.
one of the greatest of our time.
I mean, it's not surprisingly like the same type of stories you'd hear about Tom Brady or Kobe or anybody that was kind of, LeBron, anybody that's kind of getting into business. And when they transition away, it is still just like an insane drive.
Yeah,
And it's that drive gets shifted over. And so and a perfection. I mean, they are perfect. Like and they're always never happy either, right? Like in the sense that Sean's a very he's happy, he enjoys he enjoys the moment. But they always know they can do better, right? Like they never satisfied, I think is probably the better way to say it. And so for us, like that is the same thing. We're so proud of what we've put out and we're so proud of the product of the last three events and the growth in the audience and everything that's happening that we're excited about, but we're not satisfied. And so it's a marathon every day, better and better and better. And I think that's the same thing you'll see out of a Steph Curry, you'll see out of Serena Williams is yes, you might have done really well, but that doesn't stop us from kind of getting in the gym the next day and putting up another 500, free throws and
yeah.
doing the workout.
Yeah, for sure. Without alluding to it too much or like looking at the roadmap long term, like obviously snow sports are very geographic specific. When you think about those types of limitations or expanding into other markets, like how does that strategy kind of work in terms of where you guys want to potentially have a market next with the sport?
Yeah, most people tend to think about the northern hemisphere when they think of snow sports, and so right now we have an event in Asia and China, we have an event in North America in Aspen, and then we have a Switzerland event coming up, and so we're adding to that next season. We'll announce that in probably a couple of weeks. But then there's this whole southern hemisphere. So there's a pretty big crop of kids coming out of Australia, New Zealand that are really good, and
Interesting.
there's athletes out of South America. So Chile, Argentina have great mountains. Um, and for us, what we've always said is that the summer is a bit the northern hemisphere summer, is our off season. So we take a break from let's say late spring until kind of like a school year until early fall. And then what we would try to do is we would try to start some of the events in the southern hemisphere in that September timeframe. And then December timeframe is right now China. And then if we stacked on more events in Asia, it might be in the earlier window in the winter. And then in the core of winter, January through, let's say, April at the latest, we'd be looking at spots in North America and Europe.
Mhm. And you guys recently closed around, a few months ago. When you are having conversations with investors, trying to get people on board to believe in the vision and what you guys are trying to build, what do you think entices them the most about this opportunity and the long-term potential of the league?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, the thing that shocked me when I did my diligence on the league was the size of the market that participates in the sport. So there's 125 plus million skiers and snowboarders. It's number one in household income. Golf's number two. Golf, by the way, has 66 million, just
Yeah.
so you know. Like, so it's twice the size of golf. It's bigger than tennis. There's 100 million tennis players in the world. And it is men and women, and it's 8 to 80 years old. So it's this very attractive market that didn't have necessarily a dominant, like, high, um, preeminent league at the top that had the kind of product quality levels that Sean was looking for. So that's really attractive to kind of to own winter, if you will. The second thing I would say is there's audience numbers are great. Like we have millions of people. I think we were somewhere between 5 and 10 million people watched the second event, and we're going to get the numbers on the third one soon around the world. So those are really strong numbers for a league. A lot of leagues are just domestic, so they just look at the U.S. number. We get massive numbers in around Asia, Europe. So investors are excited because that's a real opportunity for audience. for a sustainable league that can grow. Our partners, our commercial partners are excited by that. But then I think back to 2, 3 days ago when we did this event in Aspen, our third one, and if you see the product, it's like the same thing. Like you do Uber for the first time, or
Yeah.
you're like, oh wow, you see the product and you see the energy of the fans. Because I can, obviously the social digital numbers, all these numbers come in over time, and you see that. But when you're actually there on site, there's so much energy and there's so many people. It's like a really cool golf event happening. Lots of hospitality. The whole town is outside of the event. There's dinners and there's parties and there's breakfast and like all these activations happening. You kind of see the power of the whole winter landscape, and I think most businesses have a lot of them, are interested in whether it's like hotels, right? And you have your hotel properties outdoors, and we're great to, Marriott's a great partner of ours, and so that's exciting. So you get to see the product and you get to believe in like the size of the market we're dealing with. And most of our investors we have great ones
Mhm.
that have been supportive of that vision.
Yeah. And last couple questions before we wrap up. When you look maybe let's say 5 to 10 years from now, everything goes right for the league. What does success ultimately equal for the Snow League?
No, I always tell everybody this, including investors. Obviously, success first and foremost is that we're around. So we spend a lot of time looking at the unit economics of the events and the league. Um, and but more importantly, we want the athletes to flourish, right? I think for us, like seeing the athletes have something where that they can focus on their training and they can do this sport that is incredibly dangerous, and it's incredibly, it's got a huge passion and a huge fan base around it. They can do it and not have to worry about having second jobs. Um, Ultimately bringing the league to all the markets around the world. And so the vision, we say sometimes F1, and we don't mean that in necessarily a drive to survive fashion. But if you think of a league that goes around to beautiful, great locations around the world and delivers this product, they, I think, have maybe 24 events or so. We'll probably try to be in the 10 to 15 range, but it's a little TBD on exactly, each event has to kind of have a reason to go there and make sense. But yeah, touring around the world, and athlete first, and sustainable.
I love it. Appreciate the time, man. Where can people learn more about you, but also tune into the Snow League?
Yeah, so the Snow League, for socials, website, obviously, if you want to see when the events are happening, you can check us out there. And then in the United States, on NBC and Peacock.
Thank you. Appreciate the time, man.
All right, take care. Thank you.